Hello and welcome to our PGA Championship breakdown here on lineups.com. Matt Brown, John Haslbauer going through, going to give you a course breakdown, the stats that matter, what our models said, and ultimately how the betting card shakes out as we head to, again, this is one of the cool things, rotating courses here for this major, John. So yes, I love being able to go into the Masters and we know exactly how Augusta plays and what we're formulating in, but I think this is where, at least for guys like you and me, I'd like to think that our handicapping prowess can play at least a little bit of an advantage because it isn't the same for these majors that go to different courses. And I'm hoping that we can come through and maybe put some winning bets in this week.
Yeah, for sure. That's always the hope. And you got to try a little bit harder on the weeks where you can't just look at what happened at this course last year. We have to actually research the course. And for me, I'm not a big futures guy. I know that the PGA Championship futures are available year round, but especially when it's a new-ish course. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit. We haven't seen Aronimink since 2018. We've only seen a few tournaments here in our lifetime. So there's not a ton you can glean off of this. For me, it's really important to see what the reporting from the course is and give a little bit more time to see what the weather's going to be, because this is a course that's going to be very weather dependent. It's going to play very differently if it's dry or wet. So I'm just trying to get as much information as I can. And it's good that we're, recording this Monday night. This will be up by Tuesday. We have a little bit more information as the week goes on that we can use, to really research what's going to happen this week.
It is going to come as no surprise to anybody that bets golf. And even if you don't bet golf, who the guy is at the top of the odds board, it is that guy, Scottie Scheffler, and followed by Rory McIlroy. But we do get the live guys back. It is a major. And so if they were qualified, they were able to come in. And so Jon Rahm is going to be on the most boards, second, third, fourth, something in there. Depending on where you're at. Cam Young is certainly going to make his name in that third, fourth spot as well. Then we kind of get to Xander and Ludwig, Matt Fitzpatrick, Bryson is going to be in there as well. Tommy Fleetwood, Patrick Cantlay. And then we kind of get into some of the fatter numbers as we look down the odds board here. And, I guess all conversations start with Scottie Scheffler when we're talking about golf, John. And yes, I guess if you want to call this a slump, I mean, all he's doing is top fiving every event that he plays and whatever, but plus 480 as we are recording this, the biggest number that you can find, definitely getting bet at least over at DraftKings, down to plus 380 over there on DraftKings. And, look, it's very tough for me to make an argument against Scottie Scheffler we'll get into your course breakdown and things that you found. But when you start to add all that stuff up and the way that he has really started to come around with his irons, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, definitely from a DraftKings perspective, they're pretty much daring you to bet anybody but Scottie, because they have the shortest number on Scottie in the market, and they've got some really good numbers on the rest of the fields. They're really tempting you to take anybody but Scottie. Like you said, I mean, he's hot. He's coming in here. He's due for better, which is a scary thing because he's only won once at the Amex, and now he's got 3 straight solo second finishes coming up to this point where he definitely played well enough to win all of those events. And some guys just were scorched earth against him, and what can you do when that happens? So Scottie is going to be an intimidating force this week, but because he's only won once this year, I'm not betting in the without Scottie Scheffler market. I also think when it comes to Aronimink relative to the other PGA Championship venues we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years, it opens up to the field a little bit more. Like last year, Quail Hollow, when Scottie Scheffler won easily, they made that course so long and difficult that only, so many people really had a shot. When we're playing a less than 7,400 yard course, that opens up the field to maybe elite wedge players who wouldn't rise to the top in Bethpage Black or Quail Hollow or Valhalla situation. But if they can hit the fairways and repeatedly separate with their wedges, then all of a sudden you might find players who aren't like your typical major contenders who can mix with Scottie this week.
So we'll talk more about this odds board here over the course of this podcast, but let's go ahead and get to the golf course. If you guys have not done so already, over at lineups.com, John writes one of the best previews for every event there is in the entire industry. I urge you to go over there and read all the words here. We will give you some of it here in verbal form, but it is Aronimink Golf Club over a suburb of Philadelphia. We have not seen this course in quite some time. You mentioned the length, which is not all that long, not short, but not all that long, a par 70. And, tons of bunkers. Rough should be at least somewhat penal, but maybe not US Open type of penal. But as you were kind of digging in to this course that we haven't seen regularly on tour, what was some of the stuff that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the yardage is the first thing that stands out. It's 73.90 about is the yardage it's playing to. That's the shortest we've seen since TPC Harding Park, where Colin Morikawa won, and I don't think that's a coincidence. When you look at the other PGA Championships winners that have won since, it's all kind of bombers and elite distance players. I'll put Scottie in that category, and then you got Xander, who's long, and Brooks Koepka, who's a predominant modern major force. Phil, when he won at Kiawah Island, won, with his driver, with distance. At Southern Hills, that's Justin Thomas, but that was a long course as well. And the top of that leaderboard was just a lot of bombers. And then, the year before that, even 2019, was Brooks Koepka again at Bethpage Black. So this is a shorter course. And when you look at the holes on this course, especially on that front nine, it's a lot of 450 and less par fours, which for PGA Tour players, that's driver wedge. That's like driver and a 9-iron pitching wedge or gap wedge into these greens. And those are scoring clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to get not extremely baked out conditions, and I don't think that we will, just based on what the climate and weather has been in the Northeast, it's been like relatively cool and not a ton of sunshine and just a little bit of rain leading in. The greens are going to be pretty receptive, at least early on. And that means that we're going to see some birdies. And the guys who have the strongest wedge play, and what I mean by that is approach from, let's say, 100 to 150, those are going to be the scoring clubs early. So I'm really looking for those players who've played well on courses of this yardage, and maybe looking past the event history this week more so than I typically would at a major, because this course is going to set up like a traditional PGA Tour course, which is a bit unusual for a major.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't take a ton from last week at the Truist, but I think one of the things that I am going to take into this tournament with is just kind of expanding my mind as far as what type of golfer can actually have a chance to win this tournament. Because what we saw last week at the Truist, where it seemed going in, the handicap was going to be that you needed to be a long hitter there and all of that. Well, the conditions, and it got super wet. And when the greens can't firm up, well, the advantage to being longer is, like you said, you're able to hit wedges in, you're able to hit short irons in, and that's how it's easier to hold these greens, especially when they're firm and fast. Well, if we think these are going to be soft and receptive, shorter guys, that opens the door for them a ton, because they can still hold the greens with 7-irons, and they can still hold the greens with some of these longer irons that you don't see them be able to do at some of these other courses. And so I think what I did see last week were guys that were able to fire in with longer irons where distance didn't really matter all that much last week. And I think maybe that could be the case here. As you said, at least we're doing this on Monday, but highs in the mid 50s, high mid 60s, the cloud, supposed to be cloud cover and all of that. Like, I'm kind of with you, and I'm no weatherman, and I'm doing this on a Monday, and things can change, but it seems to me like conditions aren't going to allow them to get these greens as firm and as fast as they would like to be.
Yeah, I think on the weekend it's going to shoot up to 80 degrees and we'll get some sun. So I think the way it will probably play out is we got rain Sunday in Philadelphia. We're going to get rain on Wednesday, the day before things kick off. And then we might get rain on Friday as well. But once we hit Saturday, Sunday, it's 80 and sunny. So I think they'll stop watering the green if they want to, and they want it to get tougher. And if they're making a mess, like if they're making a mockery of this course and everybody's like 15 under through 2 holes, then they're going to stop watering it and try to fight back a little bit. They're not the US Open. They're not going to try to, kick these players' asses for the sake of doing that. I do expect it to be kind of like 15 to 18 under par as a winning score. And the last thing I'll say about, like we talked about Quail Hollow, like you said last week, and guys kind of still hitting these greens from far away. For me, it's like, does the player have a scoring club in hand? And usually at a PGA Championship like Oak Hill, the bombers can drive it 320, 330 and give themselves a 9-iron into a hole where the rest of the field is hitting like 7 or 6-iron, and they're not thinking birdie, but the bombers are. That's why you see your Brooks Koepkas and Jon Rahms and Xander Schauffele's and Bryson DeChambeau's and Rory's consistently contend in majors. And that's why I think this week will be different, because everybody's going to have a scoring club in on this front nine when all of the holes are under 450. You know, whether it's Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, or Jon Rahm, they're all hitting some sort of wedge into this green.
If you look, guys, some other stuff that just you'll point out here that'll go into your handicapping. Only 2 par 5s, but they are scoreable. So if you want to throw that into your model, we'll talk about what we did this week with that. Really the length of this course, and if you're going like, well, John's talking about these par 4s aren't very, very long, but it's still 7,400 yards. What's going on? The length is in the par 3s. I mean, the par 3s are super long, and that's where the length of this course really comes into play. So something to put into your handicap as well here on this one. And John, I don't know what you think here about these greens. From what I've read, again, I've not been to the course, and so I'm just kind of have to go with the people that have been there and kind of the context of all of that. It seems like there's some runoff areas and different things like that, but they're pretty big. And so as long as guys aren't hitting the edges of these greens, it should be fine. So I'm kind of not, I mean, they'll definitely be tricky and whatnot, but I'm not like putting super heavy emphasis on it's got to be incredibly precise, given the fact that we are looking at what average of like 8,000 square feet on these things.
Yeah, the greens are oversized, like you said. 8,300 yards, I believe, is the number on the average green size, which is really, really large. But I think it's a misconception that people will sometimes see large greens and associate it's easy to hit them, so no one's going to make bogeys here. These are really tough greens to lag putt on, and not too different from Augusta, where we have oversized greens and a lot of undulations and contours. That's the case on these greens, and is the identity of most Donald Ross designs beyond this. So if you think Oak Hill in 2023 PGA Championship, that was Donald Ross greens. This is going to be very similar to what they saw that week. Pinehurst number 2, where we had the U.S. Open a couple years ago, was also Donald Ross. So if you're looking at recent majors, I would combine those plus the Masters and look at how guys putted there, because that will give you a pretty good inclination of who are the guys who can kind of lag putt on these super sloped and undulated greens.
We'll get into our stats here in just a second that we threw into the models, but there are always narratives that are heading into these tournaments, one of which will be Jordan Spieth going after the career Grand Slam. This will be attempt number 10 for him to try and get this done. Of course, Cameron Young coming in as one of the hottest golfers on the face of the planet. Both Fitzpatrick brothers are going to be stories here as we head into this one, as Alex has a nice showing this past week in an elevated event. And then health watch on some of these guys, Colin Morikawa, Jake Knapp, all of that, trying to figure out what these guys have going on. Of course, we add in the live guys as well into the field. So there's a little bit more for us this week as well, John, as we really try to look into these different players. And, you know, can Cam Young keep up this level of play for as long as he has? Is there anything left in the tank for Jordan Spieth to create this storybook narrative here? Is Colin Morikawa worth, playing, given the fact that we don't know if he's going to be able to get through it? Same with Jake Knapp. So there's a lot of stuff that we do have to factor in as we start to put together a betting card.
Yeah, for sure. Jake Knapp, actually, I think like breaking news within the last few minutes, withdrew from this event with that lingering wrist injury. So that's one less question we have to think about. Colin Morikawa, I've been asking everybody who I know is on grounds, like, can you follow Colin and let me know what's going on here? Because he was like limping around Augusta in his practice round and not even taking full shots. He was just putting and still T7'd there. And from everything I've heard, it looks better. It looks like a normal practice round, which you love to see. He took a precautionary withdrawal from the Truist last week. You never know what that means. But it seems like we're going to get a healthier Colin. And one other note that I'm curious, and I haven't seen an answer on this yet. I'm very eager to hear what's going on. Patrick Reed hasn't played since the Masters.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have to play because he's on the DP World Tour and he's already won twice. Like, he's going to the PGA Tour next year. And he's like, pay attention to Patrick Reed this week and how he plays, because Bryson, all of this talk about, I might just do YouTube golf and majors next year. And people are like, well, you're not going to be prepared for the majors if you don't play events. Let's see, Patrick Reed is the guinea pig. So let's see what it looks like when you only play majors. How ready are you really?
So let's go into our modeling stuff, and I will be the first to tell you, I'm not a coder. I lean on the hard work of other people who give me the framework. Now, we do put in the stats that we care about. We weight them accordingly. We put in different time frames and try to do all that and then interpret the information, but I don't want people to think that I'm sitting here building models. That is not the case at all. Shout out to all the people. I use multiple different sites out there to get things done. I use BetSperts. I use Rick's Run Good. I use Data Golf, all these different sites out there. So again, just, I don't want people to think that I'm sitting here coding all this stuff, but John, you put in stats that matter in your article each and every week. So what did you come up with, and what did you end up throwing into your model? How did you weight things accordingly?
Yeah, I always put a heavier weight on comp courses when we don't know the course that well. So I put a pretty decent weight on some of the ones I talked about. Those Donald Ross courses like Oak Hill, East Lake, I think is a pretty good one. Sedgefield, a decent one. Pinehurst, number 2, worth looking at. And then those shorter irons, I think, especially for the front nine, so proximity from about 100 to 150 is important. But then you also have those par 5s that are going to bring in the long irons, plus the 3 par 3s that are over 220. So it's like kind of a combo of the under 150 and 200 plus. That mid range is kind of, a lost range on this course. But people who are good at those two things, overall approach play, I think is going to decide this tournament, especially if it's a little bit more receptive greens. It could just become like an up and down contest from 125 yards out is your major champion, which is not usually the case. And then putting stats. I think whenever we go to a Donald Ross course, even on the PGA Tour, when we get to a Donald Ross course, I put a lot more weight on putting. I think the skilled putters can actually separate themselves here. There is a skill to green reading as well as lag putting and getting the green speeds down. And there's a lot of data that we can put into a model like that for 3-putt avoidance, approach putting, strokes gained putting on fast greens and oversized greens, all those things. So, I would say in short, putting yourself in position off the tee is important, but you don't have to be long. You don't have to be super accurate either. So I think just general strokes gained off the tee is okay for me when I'm putting in a model. A lot of weight on approach with those buckets that I talked about, and then putting with those other specific metrics that you can put in with the approach putting and comp courses.
Yeah, I pretty much the same, though. I will say, so this is something I'm kind of experimenting with this season, is I've gotten away from putting in approach buckets. I kind of think those stats are noisy. I'm gonna figure it out at the end of the year if I'm right or not with all of that, and basically just gone more towards like opportunities gained, which is like, inside of 15 feet, which that's kind of essentially how good are you with a wedge anyway? Like, can you put it within 15 feet and be able to make a birdie or something? And so I've kind of gotten away from the buckets and used more of the opportunity gain stuff. Again, this is my own little 2026 experiment. I'll let you know if it works out at the end of the year with that. So that's kind of how I went with that, as opposed to putting in the short buckets. I'm kind of like, all right, are you within 15 feet from your wedge? Are you going to be able to make a birdie? That's kind of like how I'm going with that. What did you do with driver at all, if anything? Did you? I did a little total driving because it's always better, obviously, to be longer than not. But I did want to blend it with a little bit of accuracy because, like I said, I think that this course is going to allow for multiple types of ways to win. And so if a guy's long-ish but also accurate-ish, I don't want guys bombing and gouging this, I don't think, because I don't think it's a benefit. I don't think it's a huge benefit in all of that. So I kind of just went total driving as a catch-all for, are you kind of long and are you kind of accurate?
Yeah. I just did strokes gained off the tee, just blanket, right?
Yeah.
Because total driving is going to, kind of probably like prefer the longer hitters with it, but strokes gained off the tee, like if you're not long, but you're always in the fairway, like a Russell Henley type, I think that's great here. I think that plays. That's how, Colin won at TPC Harding Park. He didn't need to be great total driving, but he was in the fairway the whole time. So I think that's enough for me. And that's different, right? Like most PGA championships, I'd be shooting up on driving distance. You got to be above average to the field to have some sort of advantage there. And then total driving would be crucial, because if you can be long and in the fairway, that's the only way you're going to find scoring opportunities. But here, I think even if you're an erratic driver, you might be able to lay back on certain holes if you don't feel comfortable with driver, at least on the front nine. So just strokes gained off the tee, and then maybe even like eyeballing for me if I'm going through recent results, like are you in good off the tee form? Like somebody like a Hideki Matsuyama, I just crossed off my list, and I really wanted to like him, but his last few starts, he's been all over the place off the tee, and that's just not going to work here.
Yeah, I crossed off some guys pretty early as well in this, and I think it is worth saying we are full field this week. I know that we're coming off of a couple of shorter fields here, so we are full field this week, normal cut, the whole 9 yards, and all of that. So not to say that there are some guys in the field that have a 0% chance of winning, but I'll go ahead and say it. There are some dudes in the field that have a 0% chance of winning. So I mean, keep that in mind as you're betting your placement market stuff and things like that. Like, you know, I'll just reference Data Golf here because it is one of the sites that I think everybody that does this a ton uses. They will put their own odds on people's, you know, ability to win, and there are like 25 guys that have infinity next to, you know, like they're literally like 25 guys that they have like infinity odds next to. So while there is a full field, kind of not really.
Yeah, I mean, so like the Masters has the seniors, you know, players who are just kind of grandfathered in and they can't win. In the PGA Championship, you have I believe it's 20 PGA professionals from the PGA Professional Championship, and they're not going to win. The best that we've ever seen is Michael Block in 2023, finished 12th, I believe. They're not going to win. So like you cross them off and all of a sudden it goes from a field of 156 to really like realistically a field of 130. But you know, after the PGA Professionals, it is a pretty deep field. So, you know, you got to earn a cut here. If you want to bet like to make the cuts, like you're actually going to get some decent odds relative to what you might have seen at the Masters, where pretty much anybody in form is expected to get through. So there's parity here, and there's a deep field, which is refreshing to see because I'm kind of sick of those signature events myself.
So before we just kind of like get straight to the betting card here, let's just like talk about some of the popular players. And if you think they might end up on your betting card, of course we can just mention that along the way. We talked about Scottie already at the top of the show. Rory going to be second on most odd boards out there. Kind of, you know, you can see as a little bit of a creeping towards Cam Young, but still going to be Rory. You're second on the odds board. You know, last week, fine. I mean, not anything, but like I often wonder about a guy like Rory who is rich. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, look, he's super rich. He's got the money. Sort of like, I do wonder about events leading into like the PGA or something. And I don't think he would ever really go to the microphone and full on say, hey, I was just out there working on some stuff to make sure that I'm in like great form for next week. But it wouldn't surprise me. You know, I mean, we did see a great round out of him with some mixed bag stuff. Are you taking anything from last week with Rory, or is it just kind of like, it is what it is, Rory's Rory?
Yeah. So he skipped the Cadillac Championship, which is also a signature event, playing for the same purse that the Truist was in back-to-back weeks. And he skipped it to do a practice round at Aronimink. Yeah. So I think that tells you all you need to know. He doesn't need the money. He's not trying to rise up the FedEx Cup standings. He wants to measure his career and his legacy in his performance in majors from here on out.
Yeah.
That point has been made loud and clear. And, you know, with Rory, it's kind of a bell curve of motivation. So like if he doesn't care, like if the event doesn't matter to him, he's either fully checked out or he's going to win by 10 because he's swinging free and he has no scar tissue and he's not worried about messing anything up. And he's great, right? And on the other end of the spectrum, if he needs it, he either locks in like he did at the Masters last week, or he completely implodes on himself. So you never know what you're going to get with Rory, but we know that he cares and is fully focused this week and has been practicing at Aronimink, which we came to find out after the Masters and his win. The key to him doing that was him kind of having more access than a lot of the field to these this practice rounds. We're going to see that again this week with Rory. He's not going to be surprised by the layout here. So he's definitely a threat to win, and I would not overreact to what he did last week. And with all of that said, I'm not going to bet him because the number is too short.
Yeah, kind of the same with me. It's almost like if you bet him, you have to kind of do a single bullet type deal. And like I said, I think the field opened up a little bit with the way that this might play. Cam Young is down to 8-1 at Caesars. You can still find a 16-1. It looks like maybe at DraftKings or whatever. So that's a little bit more fair of a price with him. I understand the odds drift. He is as hot as any player there is in the world right now. Maybe the hottest player there is in the world right now. Can he keep it up here? And honestly, it's not even can he keep it up, but does his skill set, does it give him any sort of advantage here over some of the guys that are a little bit longer?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think there's a course that I'm not going to like Cam Young at in his current form. Like, make it super long, make it super short. It doesn't matter. He won at Sedgefield, which is one of the shortest courses we see all year and happens to be a Donald Ross design. Boat race the field. Then you go to, TPC Sawgrass is more of a shot maker's course. We got to hit different shots. It's intermediate in length. That was kind of the reason why he won, because he was able to shape in a bunch of different directions. And then he goes to the Cadillac Championship at Doral, which is the longest course that we're going to see all year. Bombs his way to also boat racing the field there. So it doesn't matter how the course sets up. The man's form right now is unbelievable. He's clicking in all cylinders. The putter is a huge strength for him.
Yeah.
And he turned that around since last year. Just been consistently lapping the field. His stroke is great, and his caddy is reading all the putts for him. They're a perfect combination for each other, and they've really unlocked something. So you combine that all with, like, we're back in the Northeast, and Cam Young is a Northeast guy from New York. Shout out New York. New York is having a moment in Philadelphia right now, coming off that sweep of the Sixers. So I think the vibes are good for a New Yorker coming back to Philadelphia. I like that for Cam. So I actually talked myself into betting Cam this morning at 16-1. I thought that I was going to put a disgusting card of like 10 guys at like 30 to 60-1. And I realized how disgusting that was looking. And I said, you know what, I got to have exposure to one favorite because all the favorites are playing so well. And I chose Cam because I'm not taking that 8-1 number. I would not endorse that. If that's the best you got, then I would look somewhere else. But at 16-1, I know people have had like futures on him for a while, much better. But as I assess the board today, 16-1 is a fantastic number for Cam.
Yeah, I'll put it this way, and the guy that we're about to talk about next, Jon Rahm, the best you can find on him out there is 16-1. I would certainly rather Cam Young over Jon Rahm. All of this stuff for me, John, I look at Rahm, and obviously we know the talent is there, and we know all of this stuff. It seems like we're getting a little bit more of the Rahm of old, where the head case stuff is a little bit more prevalent than it was. There was this time where he was locked and loaded and everything was great. He had quit throwing tantrums on the course and all the different stuff like that. And the live results to me are like, it's fine, but it's also any of these guys that we're talking about playing in that format, in those fields where there are a handful of week to week, really, really good players. And outside of that, it's a fairly weak field. We would be talking about how weak these fields were on a week to week basis if this was the PGA Tour. It's just hard for me to get there when I look at a Scottie, a Rory, a Cam Young, some of these other guys we'll talk about with Xander and Fitzpatrick and, Ludwig and all of that, and say, yeah, I'm going to pay the same price for Rahm than I am for some of these other guys, or a worse price than I am for some of these other guys.
Yeah, I got bit by Rahm at the Masters. I thought that the form was so good and so consistent for so long, and he'd won there and everything made sense. And I don't know what happened. He doesn't know what happened either. He couldn't explain it. He was like, I didn't play well. I kind of figured it out at the very end when it was too late. And then he wins on Live the next week. So it might have just been an aberration at Augusta. I do think the Live schedule is not going to prepare him for a course like this. The rough being as grown out as it is, the classical design of it, a Donald Ross course, like they're just not playing those courses with any regularity. And I think that will be a disadvantage. So while we were very high on the Live players, particularly the two top Live players were the only ones we were talking about at the Masters with Bryson and Rahm. This week, I've kind of soured on both of them just based on the course fit.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Bryson next, and same deal with me. Like, look, anytime length is where I consider length to be a massive factor, Bryson has to enter the conversation here. But like I said, I don't think there's going to be a huge advantage for being super long here on this. And like, that is really the weapon, right? That's the skeleton key for Bryson DeChambeau, because if he is 40 yards longer than everybody else, that is a huge, huge advantage. I just don't think it's going to be an advantage here where, okay, cool, you're 80 in, someone's 120 in. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, like, that's not going to be a big, okay, cool. It doesn't matter. They're all pros and whatever. So I couldn't even get there with Bryson. And honestly, the numbers, I mean, he's taking money. I mean, we're down to 18-1 at Bet365, which takes some pretty decent bets. I mean, 1850 at DraftKings and stuff. You can still find a 22 at FanDuel on Bryson. if you wanted to like throw a dart in DFS or something, if you're playing multiple lineups and just hope that he has like a run pure week or something, that's fine. I'm not going to talk you off of that. But as far as a bet for me, not even close, or honestly, not even considered.
Yeah, I mean, and just use Valhalla as an example of like kind of your typical PGA / US Open modern venue where if you're long, doesn't matter that the fairways are super narrow, nobody's hitting them. And
Yeah.
if you're Bryson, you've got like 150 in where the rest of the field has 180, but 150 for you is a pitching wedge or less, and the rest of the field is hacking like a 6-iron out of the rough. They have no chance of making birdie from there, and Bryson does. That's not what this course is at all. It kind of devalues off the tee, generally speaking, in favor of approach. And the approach numbers have not been great for Bryson. They haven't been the reason that he's been playing as well as he has. So again, that's why I just go back to course fit. It's not my favorite spot for Bryson right now. You know, when we get back to Shinnecock in a month, I think that sets up a little bit better for him. But for this week, you know, it's just not, it doesn't line up great for me.
Let me clump together 3 names for you, and then we can get to the rest of your betting card here. But as we look at the odds board, Xander Schauffele, Ludwig Oberg, Matt Fitzpatrick are going to be the next guys in that next tier right there from an odds perspective. You can find any of these guys as low at some of the books as like 16, as high as 22, I think we're seeing here on Matt Fitzpatrick, at least at one of the books. You can find a 20 on Ludwig. You can find an 18. Now you can find a 20 actually on Xander as well. Obviously Fitzpatrick was on a heater there for a while. I don't know what you think, that if that was just a heater for him and then maybe we're coming back down to earth at some point, or if you think that that's the true Matt Fitzpatrick. And I don't know. Have you ever seen that meme where it's like they take the shovel and the money and throwing it into that's me and Ludwig Oberg. Like it's just like basically like I shovel the money into the furnace on him. And then Xander, I thought Xander was going to have a better showing last week than he did. So curious your thoughts on those 3 guys.
Yeah, I probably feel least, as far as outrights, I feel least confident in Xander just because he hasn't really mixed this year. It's been a lot of backdoors, and then it was pretty concerning what we saw last week at Quail Hollow, where he actually has good course history. You would expect him to play a little bit better, and it's not the same as a Rory situation where he's playing Quail, but really prepping for this week. I think he would have loved to have won at Quail Hollow, Xander, because he's got to see one go through the hoop at some point. It's been a while since he won by his standards. So then that leads me to a decision on Ludwig and Fitz that I was originally thinking of betting them both in lieu of Cameron Young. Once I bet Cam Young, I think I'm going to pass on these 2.
Yeah.
Ludwig, you got to like everything tee to green. The putter was tough for him last week. It was a reason he didn't win, honestly. The putter was really bad the first 3 rounds, then he turned it around late. But I'm concerned about what happened at the Players still. I'm concerned about his major track record outside of the Masters. Just looking into that a little bit. He's got some ugly history at the PGA. For whatever reason, like on those big stages, he's not rising enough for me to justify at the 20-1 number. And then for Fitzpatrick, it's a fair number what it's drifting to. He's not dominating is my issue. Like when he's winning, it's like it's almost like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. You know, it's like he's gaining like a stroke in each of the categories.
Nobody wants to go beat him. He just kind of outlasts everybody.
Right. Like he's not going to win it with his irons. You know, he's going to win it by not making any mistakes. And he certainly can win it here. I think you can draw comparisons to the Country Club, another Northeast venue where he won his major, you know, the US Open that year. But he's not dominant enough for me to say I'm taking one favorite at the top of the board and it's going to be him. And that's the approach I wanted to go with. And looking for an alpha, it was clearly Cam Young for me separating after Scottie Scheffler and Rory as the guy that I like most at the top.
The last guy in the 20s, and then I will get to the rest of the guys you are either considering or have already bet, is Tommy Fleetwood. The biggest number out there is 27. The lowest number in the market out there at 20, which I think is crazy. What do we think of Tommy Fleetwood?
This is a Tommy Fleetwood course. You know, it's not a Bombers course. It's ball strikers. That's what he does. You know, it's linksy in a way. Donald Ross has a little bit of links in all of his courses. He's a Scottish guy. the fairways run out into bunkers in a way that's supposed to be reminiscent of links golf, and there's no flat lies in this fairway. He's a creative shot maker. I like all these things for Tommy. The form kind of like, I don't love where it is. I like the way he looked last week, but he kind of fell off a little bit. He's drifted as a result of that. If he was this price at the U.S. Open at Shinnecock where he almost won, I'd probably be on it at 27. But for right now, he's kind of in this in between, like no man's land on the odds board where it really drops off after him. And before him, there's a lot to like about all the other guys.
I'm going to be that guy, and I'm going to be that guy that I actually hate, which is like you take someone who's really awesome at something they do, and then you like talk about why they aren't as awesome as everybody thinks that they are or whatever. But like if we're talking about win equity, and like that's what we're doing when we're talking about outrights. So you get Tommy Fleetwood, who has won one time in 2024 at the Dubai Invitational that had 60 players and had guys like Maximilian Kiefer and Hurley Long and Aishun Wu and all these whatever dudes. Like of the 60, like 30 guys were actual real players or whatever. Then you go to the Tour Championship and like, I get it. Cool. There's 30 players. I mean, he beat 29 other guys. There's 30 players. And then you go to the DP World, the India Championship that he won. And by the way, in October, there's like 7 guys that are like tour players in the whole field. And the rest are just like crazy Indian golfers that you've never heard of. And so it's like, I mean, I don't know why he's a lovable guy and he's awesome and he's whatever. And I think it was a great story with the Tour Championship about having never won on American soil and all of that. But like, dude, win equity for Tommy Fleetwood is like nowhere near 27-1. Like, I mean, this guy should be in the 40s. I mean, these prices on him are insane.
Yeah, it's just an awkward spot on the board. The Tommy Fleetwood truthers would like to hear that his only PGA Tour win at Eastlake was a Donald Ross design right around that 7,400 number 2. But I think the courses are just going to play a little bit too different. And obviously we're playing with a field of 156, not 30. So a more difficult task at hand. Again, I always sucker myself into betting him at the Open just because I want to see it. I would love to be there for that moment, but you can root for that. It's almost like Rory winning the Masters. Like I don't need a ticket on it to be happy for the guy.
Exactly. Okay, so that gets us kind of everybody else kind of in that longer shot range right there. You plugged all the stuff into your models. What kind of spit out? What guys did you start to really dig into and research more? And then where did you ultimately end up? We did say you started your card with Cameron Young.
Yes, I did. So again, a lot of back and forth. My original thought here was easier PGA Championship opens the door for more parity. Let's get some arrows in the quiver. Let's get some bullets in the chamber and just see what we can hit because we don't know what to expect here. It's a new course and a lot of different guys can win it. Let's get a lot of exposure in the mid-range. But then I ultimately looked at everything and said, I don't really see an outlet for Cam Young to stop playing great. So I started there and then I kind of limited the mid-range who I want. Based on the model, I like a lot about Russell Henley. So that was kind of my first bet this week. I got him around 50, 60-1. Just when we talk about a wedge fest, the form's been a little up and down this year, but we know Russell Henley long-term is one of the best wedge players, in the world. And finally, he gets a major where he can actually lean on that strength. At the traditional majors we've seen Russell Henley at, it's been the Augusta Nationals and Quill Hollows of the world, where he's got 200 into all these greens anyway. Not really the strength of his game, but he's gotten it done that way anyway. He's finished top 10 in each of his last 3 major starts, which people may not associate Russell Henley with, but he's showing up in the majors and finished 3rd at the most recent Masters, last month. So he is elevating his game on the biggest stage, which is hard for people to believe, knowing how much Russell Henley has hurt us. But the stats are telling us he's showing up in difficult conditions, and now we get a course that can actually accentuate his strengths with the wedge play. So I like Russell Henley. I also bet Colin Morikawa for almost all of the same reasons. Like, let's just, as an outright, I'm not going to play him in like a one and done. I'm not going to play him in a single entry lineup because I've already been burned that way at the Players with the withdrawal, and we know that's on the table. But the good, if you're betting on the upside, a guy at 40-1, if he was in full health and came out and everybody said, okay, he looks like himself, he would be Tommy Fleetwood's price this week,
Yes.
because all Colin Morikawa's done is win a signature event and finish top 10 pretty much every other week he's teed it up in full health. So a top 10 finisher at the Masters at less than 100%, I have to believe that time heals wounds. And as he takes a couple more weeks off, he'll feel even healthier this week. And if he does, this is a course that is very similar to TPC Harding Park in yardage and in the strengths that you need. And Colin has won a PGA Championship at that venue before. So I like Colin. I think this is a great buy low spot at the number we're getting on him. Let's see. One more guy in this mid-range that I bet. Patrick Cantlay. I'm never proud of it. I don't feel great about it. I'm not gonna like talk people into it if they want to laugh at me like you just did about Patrick Cantlay, because we all get it. He's finished top 12 in his last 4 starts. I understand they're all backdoor top 12s. I get it. But the form is coming back. He is a Northeast savant. He's top 5 in strokes gained in the Northeast, which is one of the stats that you can pull in the models that I use. He's a BMW championship merchant. He's won 2 BMW championships, which are always kind of played. It used to be the Western Open, but now they kind of just exclusively play it on bent grass in the Northeast. He won at Caves Valley. He won at Wilmington Country Club, all in this kind of region of the country. So Patrick Cantlay, you're getting a discount. I'm looking on Data Golf's kind of like their odds, and they put Patrick Cantlay at the shortest odds after Tommy Fleetwood. You have that like big chunk of like 8 favorites. They're saying Patrick Cantlay is the next best, guy in this field. And I just, based on the numbers, I tend to agree. Obviously we see how this stuff plays out, and he seems like a good fit, and he kind of walks out the gates and, plays himself out of the tournament before it begins. But, at the price, I think the upside is there, and the profile fit certainly makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it is. So I started with Morikawa as well. I haven't figured out which shorter guy I'm going to play yet. That's kind of like the next step for me. And I'll admit this was a full-on no-brainer for me. And I know that there will be some of you out there that are in Circa markets. And so Morikawa's 51-1 at Circa. Like, that's just a no-brainer bet. Even if he walks up to the podium tomorrow and says like, yeah, my back's at least a little iffy, or at 51-1, I'm still betting Colin Morikawa, right? I mean, like, it's just, there's like you said, I mean, we watched him hobble around like a 75-year-old guy and still top 10 these things. And like, I'd like to believe a couple of weeks off and, figuring things out and the rehab and all the stuff that these guys must get, and the PT and all the doctor's attention, I would like to think that he's pretty good heading into this thing. 4th overall, and kind of like the consensus model that I do. I model at different sites, put them all into. That's the beauty of AI now. It's like I modeled all these different sites and take screenshots and then throw it in there, and then it like just tells me the consensus of like all the whatever. It's like 4th overall in kind of the consensus model with all that, and really does, like you said, I mean, checks all the boxes. And if this was Morikawa coming off of a T15 last week, then yeah, he's 25-1.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's that easy. So, started there with him. The next one on mine, and this was another just because of the price anomaly with this, and you mentioned that it's almost as if DraftKings is daring us to bet some of these guys out there this week. And so I was pretty shocked that JJ Spawn was 94-1. Game kind of rounding into form a little bit and all of that, and like weirdly in a 20 round model that I put together to try to kind of look at the people who were coming in hot, JJ Spawn's 8th in that model. Like, and at 94-1, that is a bet like every single day of the week for me. You kind of go in and you start to see like the approach numbers getting better. You see the tee to green is a little bit better as well, giving himself some opportunities to make some birdies and things like that. Hadn't putted all that great, but maybe the more opportunities he gets, the better chance he will to go in there and make some of those. And so JJ Spawn at 94-1. And then the last one, and this is not one that I'm like jumping up and down about either, kind of like you were talking about with the Cantlay stuff. But why does Adam Scott just like model so well for like every tournament now? It's like it doesn't matter what course, it doesn't matter what. Like Adam Scott just models so well. John, what is going on?
I'm with you on him. And as soon as you started that sentence, I knew where we were going.
Yeah,
because I bet I picked Adam Scott in one and done last week. I was so confident in his fit at Quail Hollow.
Yeah,
and he turned it on late. A little too late, but I at least like that he gained with the putter, because it looked like he was kind of helpless the week before at the Cadillac, and everything else was perfect. But at the end of the day, this is an approach course. And I know when we break down PGA Tour courses on a week-to-week basis, it's a broken record to say that approach matters. But here, I think you're going to see a little less separation off the tee. And with the oversized greens, maybe a little bit less emphasis on around the green, or at least you can supplement that with some bunker stats, because if you miss the greens, you're probably going to end up in one of the 170 plus bunkers on this property. So with Adam Scott, ball striking has been great. He's in control of the driver, and he's number one in strokes gained approach. If you want to go 24, 36, 50 rounds, it's Adam Scott.
Yeah.
So this is finally a course where I think plays perfectly into him being able to separate with the irons that have, it's been well over a year of him playing at this level. It's just a matter of, can he hit the putts? And at 100-1 or 90 to 100-1 where he is right now, that's absolutely a risk I'm willing to take of what is this coin flip of what version of Adam Scott do we get on the greens.
The only placement market I have in right now, I cashed it last week, and I'll go right back to it as long as the number continues to be fat, because the other Fitzpatrick, Alex Fitzpatrick, top 20, you can get at 3.5 to 1 in a ties included. If you want to go outside of that, you can get over 4 to 1 on him with all of that. But if you like, I understand this is not PGA Tour numbers and stuff, but if you like look at approach numbers, just blanket across all of the tours and all that stuff like that, like Alex Fitzpatrick is up there. Like, I mean, like his approach numbers are really, really, really good. And that's why, going back to what we were talking about, of broadening my mind of who actually might have a chance in this tournament. I don't think he has a lot of win equity. I don't think he's going to win this thing, but shorter guy, not all that, but takes advantage of hitting fairways and with the irons and stuff. And so, I think he can kind of like get around this course enough to get inside the top 20 like last week. I mean, contending obviously had a brutal Sunday when it all came down to it, but I think this is a guy that is maybe on a heater right now, and I'm just going to ride the heater.
I think you got to ride the heater. I put a live bet article in the big events for lineups after each round, and he was a guy I picked, live top 10 at about like plus 300 after the first round, because you were like, can he continue this heater? And as soon as you see it, it's like, okay, no, he's still hot. So let's keep riding it. We're in the city of brotherly love, Matt. And
there we go.
And I'm just waiting for one of these novelty props to come out. Matt and Alex Fitzpatrick both finished top 20 in the city of brotherly love, and I'm all in on it. And I don't know what those odds are going to be, but I feel like you'll get pretty good odds on that. That's like a DraftKings prop waiting to happen. And I'm with you. I like both the Fitzpatrick brothers. They may not make it on my outright card, but they're both playing extremely well, and I think they might feed off of each other in this Philadelphia environment.
Okay. So for the DFS people watching this, I will say some other people that modeled well for me, and I didn't consider them, so I didn't dig in totally, but I'll just let you know. Kurt Kitayama weirdly modeled fairly well for me. Siwoo Kim, anytime we're talking about accuracy and stuff and all stuff like that, Siwoo is going to model well. To your point, the Russell Henley as well modeled pretty good for me. And then this is something I would have to dig into, like Jordan L. Smith I'd have to dig into a little bit further on that one. But again, another guy that like modeled fairly well for me. If you're trying to round out cards, I think he's on like 5,500 over there on DraftKings. And I said I like Alex Fitzpatrick. He's 5,900 on DraftKings this week. I don't know if he'll be like free square super popular or whatever. John, you probably have a better handle on that than I do, but sometimes maybe you just take the free square and try to differentiate elsewhere. And like, he's so ridiculously cheap that he gives you the ability to get to some of the big boys.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Like if you want to play Scottie Scheffler, don't get cute about some contrarian 5K guy. Like pair those guys up. Nothing's a sure thing, but Alex Fitzpatrick is more of a sure thing than everybody priced around him. A couple other guys in his range. I wrote a DFS article today for lineups. You can find that on lineups.com too. Like identify the chalk and make your decisions around it. But people should know who the chalk is, and usually the chalk is who played well the week before, because pricing is set before that week is over. So Christopher Rayton is severely underpriced. That guy is on a heater right now. He's got 4 top 15s over his last 5 starts and coming off of a win. So you can get a good discount on him. I like him this week. Your boy Nikolai Højgaard from last week. He may not be able to win a tournament, but he can definitely put himself in the mix.
Top 10 with the best of them, though. That's for sure.
He sure can. And at his price, I believe he's low 6Ks. That's going to play very well. I actually think Højgaard is the best value for his price in this entire field. So I'll be building around him, even if he comes at higher ownership. And then Matt McCarty is a guy who, he came out to that first round lead last week at the Truist, and you knew he wasn't going to win it and wire to wire this thing. But he has continued to run a top 15s 4 in a row now, going into this week. And he actually has really good history at Augusta, T24, T12. Or T14 in his first 2 appearances there. So that he's not going to disappear on the major stage. If you're looking to get maybe a little bit contrarian, I don't think he's going to catch guys by surprise, but McCarty won't come at the same ownership at a Fitzpatrick or Højgaard this week, just based on what they did last week. So that might be a guy you want to consider.
One other guy I'll ask you about who fairly cheap, certainly name value is there and is beloved. What about Ricky Fowler?
Yeah, we should talk about Ricky. Kind of like, he made the Ryder Cup team in Rome doing a similar ascendance where he was gaining throughout the bag. The irons look really good. He popped at LACC. I can see him doing that here. I actually think the way that the weather stacks up is going to produce a really similar tournament to that US Open at LACC, where it was overcast. Marine layer the first 2 rounds. They just couldn't get any sun on the course, so it was soft and guys ripped it apart. Ricky Fowler and Xander both set that US Open scoring record early. They got their birdies in early and held on over the weekend when the sun came out. That could be what we get this week, and you're getting a pretty good number on Ricky, who's in really good form. So he's becoming a popular bet. Can he win this? We'd love to see it, right?
Right. Yes.
Like, it'd be great to see. I'm not so convinced, but it's a pretty good number, and I'm not going to talk people off of it if they like Ricky and want to see it.
It's kind of the deal where I'm pretty sure he's going to end up in some sort of placement market bet for me. And if there's any advantageous head-to-heads, I certainly would like to target him there as well. But yeah, I don't know what the win equity is, but boy, he's playing about as good as we've seen in a while. And I'm going to, again, another guy that I like to ride the heater on, because when he's playing well, and then it'll eventually fall off and it'll be fine. But I like to ride the heater on a guy like Ricky Fowler. Guys, if you have not done so already, everything we do absolutely free here on the channel. Hit that subscribe button. We do appreciate the support there. And as I said, one of the very best preview articles there is in the industry, found over at Lineups, written by John Haslbauer right there on this very video. So go in, take in all of that great work. Again, there'll be multiple articles that'll be up over there. Just click on his name. They will all populate, and you can see all the stuff that's heading into the PGA Championship here. John, it's always great to talk these golf tournaments with you, man. I feel like we have a pretty decent idea of how this might go, and then of course we'll get rejoined again, and somehow Minwoo will find a way to have won this thing or something, and we'll be like, what in the hell is going on, with all of this. But it's cool to really break down these courses that we don't see very often, and try and see if we can get some sort of edge over maybe just the general population out there.
Yeah. We're studying for the final, we're cramming in all the information that we can. I'm excited for this tournament, especially I'm going to be on the grounds actually Saturday and Sunday.
Where's the invite, man? Come on. What's going on?
I managed to convince them to give me a credential. So I will be in the media center for the first time at like I've been credentialed at TGL, but this is my first time on the course, not inside the ropes. I got to still work my way up to get that kind of access, but whoever wins, I should be in the room, and maybe I'll get a question in and ask them hey, Adam Scott, everybody doubted you except
yeah.
Matt and I. What do you want to say to
Except for us, we're cashing fat tickets on Adam Scott. So yes, I hope you do ask him that. John, always a great time, buddy. And again, guys, hit that subscribe button. Do appreciate it. And good luck on all your PGA Championship bets.